If your schedule looks like this and you're like, I have to pencil in like 10 minutes to remind myself to eat lunch, and I'm so busy I can't even think about working out, then this video is for you. I have been a student of both the psychology and the physiology of successful exercise plans for about 8 years now. And what we're gonna go over in this video is some of my top tricks of the trade for how to get effective workouts in when you are so busy you can't even. Before we get started, I wanna remind everybody to like, comment, and subscribe so you can keep up with this channel, and you can also look at some other videos in How to Start Month, which this video is the last video of. So let's begin at the beginning. If you're a complete beginner, what you're looking to do is build the habit, but you have no idea how to start or no idea what to do. The single most important thing you can do is build the habit. Now, a lot of this comes down to finding out what you can do, finding out what your schedule allows, and turning that into something as sustainable as you can make it. For complete beginners that I have worked with, going 30 to 40 minutes about 3 days a week has become a really good way to build the habit. Now, if your schedule doesn't allow for that, that's okay. If you can only do 20 minutes 2 days a week, do something 20 minutes 2 days a week. If you only have an hour 1 day a week, do that. What you have to do here is leverage psychology to build a habit. Now, there's a lot of psychological research that I've read, so you don't have to, and a lot of this comes down to understanding where you are on the stages of change model. The first stage is pre-contemplation, where you haven't thought about it and don't think you need to make a change. The second stage is contemplation. This is where you've thought about it, but you really don't have any plan to do it. You know you need to work out, but you're not quite ready to change and build into that healthy lifestyle. The next phase is preparation. Preparation is where you've made a plan to be active, but you haven't executed it yet. It might be, I plan to do this in about a month. I have resistance bands in my Amazon cart. I've made an appointment to tour a gym to see if I like it. Threads of action are kind of there in your mind, but you haven't executed on it yet. The next phase is action. Action is I am actively executing my plan to be active, but I'm still at the beginning and I've been doing this for less than 6 months. And the final phase is maintenance. This is I've been executing my plan to be active and I have been successfully doing it for less than 6 months. 6 months is the sticking point to building a habit. So if you feel like any sort of exercise routine really hasn't been able to stick, it's probably because you've been trying for less than 6 months. If you can't come up with something you can consistently do for 6 months, you're gonna struggle a lot. 6 months is when something becomes so much of a habit that it would just be more unusual in your life to not do something than to do it. And once you've reached the stage where it's taking something away feels unusual, you've built the habit. Part of being a beginner is understanding where you are in the stages of change model. And what you then have to do is make a plan to get to the next stage of the model. Once you kind of have the next stage in front of you, it's easier to become active. It's easier to start a workout routine if you have things you know you can do at home. It's easier to start a workout routine if you know you're working with a gym or a personal trainer. What you also need to do is understand what works for you. If you can sense something isn't working, it's okay to try something else. You're not going to be effective unless the habit's built, and if the habit isn't something you really like to do, it's going to be hard to get you into the habit. You should find an environment also that you feel comfortable in. Some gyms can be really intimidating. You should find a place where you feel it's safe for you to learn, and you're not going to feel threatened if you're a complete beginner. Well, the most important thing you can do is build the habit. If you're a complete beginner, these are also 2 things I like to tell you for the actual exercise science part. Something that gets your heart rate up, and find something that gets you moving better. If you're a complete beginner, most forms of physical activity are going to get your heart rate up. If you want to do a dance class, that works. If you want to go for a hike, that works. If you want to do strength training, that works. Find something that makes you sweat. Because if you're able to do that, you're able to actually build the habit of exercising. It doesn't have to be one thing in particular. And this again comes back to finding something you're motivated to do and want to do and willing to do and feeling like you can do it in a certain environment. Then, to move better, I like to say, find something that will make you sweat more in the future. The better you can move, the better your quality of life is, and that also means the more you're going to have fewer limitations on what exercises you can do. It's better if you have more flexibility, if you have more strength in key areas like your core, your glutes, your shoulders. Something like strength training might come easier to you because you're not going to be setting yourself up to get injured, and you're going to know how to recruit the muscles in your core, or know what activated glutes feel like, or know that you're flexible enough to get into this lunge variation. Any sort of beginner personal training program should always start with a lot of foundational strength, And this is really important to build, even if some of the stuff that makes you sweat isn't as foundational. It's going to it's when you have this foundational strength where you're flexible, where you can move well, you know how to recruit the right muscles, you're going to be able to go forward faster and see more progress faster. So build a habit, get your heart rate up, and get something that will get you moving better, and you're going to be into the next phase. So if you've been doing this for about 6 months, you're a little bit more intermediate to advanced. You want to know how to progress your workout further, even if you're a bit time constrained. You're probably in the maintenance stage or the later part of the action stage of our stages of change model. And usually those fitness goals are a bit more clearly formed because the habit is built and you have a better understanding of your own body and what it can and can't do. Once you're kind of in a more intermediate to advanced phase, more people may try to venture out past 30 minutes, 3 days a week. They might try to extend it to 45 minutes or an hour, or they may try to add maybe a 4th or 5th day on. Usually, if most people don't need to work out in a gym more than 5 days a week. If you're somewhere between 3 days a week and 5 days a week, that's good. You need time to rest, you need time to recover. You can do things like go for a walk, go for a bike ride, go stretch in front of the TV on a day where you're not like going to a gym or going to a fitness class. It's not saying don't be active, it's saying don't strategically push yourself to try to pick up the heaviest thing or run as fast as you can on a rest day. If you're schedule constrained, you need to maximize the most out of a short period of time. For these kinds of people, supersets and HIIT are your friend. Supersets are a form of strength training where you're training one group of muscles and then immediately going into the opposing group of muscles right after it. So if you were doing a row, you would go immediately into your chest press, which are the muscles that oppose your back muscles in the row. Supersets will cut down on the time it takes to get a workout in. It will give yourself more of an aerobic workout, so you're going to be pushing a little bit harder cardiovascularly than if you're giving yourself a ton of rest time. This can also work really well for people who get bored easily. After doing something like supersets, you should always give yourself 48 hours of rest for the specific muscle groups you targeted. So if you did chest and back one day, try to do biceps and triceps the next day, or try to do something lower body related. You don't want to be overtraining on something that's already been pushed to exhaustion because you're never going to be able to recover, and that's how you get injured. HIIT is when you do cardio intervals and push as hard as you can for about a 20 to 30 second interval with about 10 to 15 seconds worth of rest. HIIT should target your anaerobic threshold, which is training in the absence of oxygen. So when you're doing HIIT, you should be pushing so hard that it is difficult to breathe and you probably can't talk. So if you're pushing this hard, you should also be exhausted after about 30 minutes. And when you're doing this, you should feel like you were doing an hour's worth of cardio in half the time. You're constrained by the number of days. Like you can only do 2 days a week at a gym. Push-pull splits can work really well. These are total body splits that will work opposite muscle groups on opposite days. So one day you would do your push set. This would be things like a chest press. This would be things like a lunge. This would be things like a shoulder press. And then on the next day, you would go do pull movements. So things like a deadlift, things like a row, things like a bicep curl. And you can do these back to back because you're working opposite muscle groups on opposite days. So if you have a bit more time on your hands, but you might be constrained by the number of days. Zone 2 cardio and more traditional strength training are your friend. So zone 2 cardio is cardio that's less intense than HIIT. You're working at about 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. If you're not entirely sure what that means, it means that while you're doing the cardio, you should be able to talk, but with some difficulty. Zone 2 cardio needs to last for about 45 minutes. So this isn't something you can effectively do in like 10 minutes. To really get the effect of being at that 60 to 70% maximum heart rate, you need to do this for at least 45 minutes, and it can go, this is something you could do longer. So if you were training to run a race, you're training in about zone 2. So if you're trying to run a half marathon or a marathon, you're trying to push that kind of zone 2 threshold instead of pushing as hard as you can, because you can't push that hard for that long. Ideally, you should have kind of a mix of zone 2 cardio and HIIT. But if zone 2 cardio is something that can work well with your schedule, it can be a really good way to boost endurance. HIIT will train more for power, zone 2 will train more for endurance. So you have more time in your hands, more traditional strength training can be something you can do, and it will leverage time differently than supersets. So for this, you're working on about 2 to 4 sets for an exercise, about 8 to 10 exercises, 3 to 12 repetitions per exercise. Ideally, that's closer to 8 to 10, with 2 to 5 minutes of rest in between each set. Now, you don't have this kind of rest with supersets because you're going from one thing to another and one thing to another and one thing to another. You'll truly be working the muscle to exhaustion here, so you're gonna need the rest period to recover. This is no better or worse than supersets. It just leverages time differently and leverages how you use muscles differently. If you're doing a superset correctly, your chest muscles will still be resting, but you're going to be working the opposing muscle while it's resting. This kind of training can be a little difficult if you get bored easily because the rest periods can be interminable, or you just like go do something else and completely forget you're like trying to strength train like this. And it can be a little bit easier if you don't have as much like muscle endurance or you're a bit lacking cardiovascularly, because supersets can be an aerobic workout. Another way to kind of help with strength training is to use a timer for strength training. Some people aren't great at counting reps. Some people will also try to cheat during an exercise where they might go down and then pop right back up and not try to maximize time under tension. A way to kind of help you do that is to maybe set a timer for 45 seconds and try to get those 8 to 10 reps of an exercise in. Usually when you're doing a set of 8 to 10 reps, that will take 40 to 60 seconds depending on what it is in your own body. So you're basically kind of setting the timer and taking a little bit of the mental onus off of counting. This can also be really helpful for beginners because trying to get my form and count and all this can be a little overwhelming. If you've done all of this and you feel like you're plateauing, there's still things for you to do. You might be a little bit more advanced, so it might be trying to add more advanced moves into your workout routine. Also, if you feel like you're plateauing, don't be afraid to try new things and see what else that can unlock for you. I started to get really sick of strength training, didn't want to do it anymore, felt so bored, and I started trying yoga. This gave me an entirely new appreciation for balance and body control and strength training that has nothing to do with picking up a heavy object. This gave me a new window into what strength training could be. It helped me try to do more with isometrics, so holding something with a weight, or balance, trying to do something on one leg. You don't know what this journey has in store for you. None of us do. So be open, be willing to change, and be willing to do different things. So you may have noticed during this I didn't mention a few things. One of them is nutrition. I am not a nutritionist. I am a personal trainer and corrective exercise specialist. If you are a personal trainer, you should not be giving out dietary advice. If you have a personal trainer who is giving you a meal plan, who is not a registered nutritionist or a certified nutritionist, run. Personal trainers shouldn't be doing that. That's completely outside their scope of practice. They can answer factually true nutrition questions like broccoli is better for you than Diet Coke, but they're not your meal planner. That being said, diet does play a role in achieving your fitness goals, and if you eat a well-balanced, nutritionally dense diet, this will go better for you than if you're eating a diet completely composed of junk food. Also, drink lots of water. Hydration is really important for recovery, and it's really important for athletic performance. Average adult needs about 64 ounces a day of water, and if you're at a day where you're pushing really hard at the gym, okay to go over that. It's okay to go over that, and you probably need to so you don't get incredibly dehydrated or fall behind. Sleep and stress also play a role in fitness. Try to sleep 6 to 8 hours a night. I know that's really hard. I'm not really good at this either. If you're exhausted and you can barely function, not the day to max out. It's okay to skip the gym, or it's okay to do something really, really easy like go for a walk or stretch. You need to give yourself time to recover. Sleep is a very important part of that, and if you're able to do that, that will pay dividends for the future. Do what you can to keep your stress levels under control. I know exercise can have nothing to do with that. I will say the biggest reason I exercise is for my mental health, and exercise and moving your body can be an excellent tool to help manage stress, keep your mental health in a good place. Thanks everyone! Last video on how to start month, and we'll go back to normal programming for this channel in February. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you thought, tell me how you managed to keep keep up your exercise routine within a busy schedule, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching, everybody.